If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come, bring my spirits up. There's some shit I like to fix, but I still know that I'm blessed.
Welcome back to my coverage of the Kristin Smart trial. Wednesday, September 21st, 2022, Week 10, Monterey County Courthouse in Salinas, California. And I'm actually looking forward to Sanger. You know, it's a new day, and getting through Sanger is one step closer to justice, in my opinion. Sorry, my voice is straining terribly. Sorry about that. And my trigger thumb is triggering, and I have to adjust how I do this. I was doing written scripts, but I can't keep up with that. So wish me luck. Here we go.
We begin today with a big development in the Kristin Smart murder trial. After prosecutors called their last witness yesterday, the Kristin Smart murder trial now moves to the phase where defense attorneys call their witnesses to the stand.
First on the witness stand for the defense was a professor and forensic scientist who also looked at some of that evidence collected from under the deck of Ruben Flores' Arroyo Grande home.
So Dr. David Carter has examined evidence collected from under Ruben's deck, and he teaches at Shamandine University in Hawaii and has spent the last 20 years studying what happens to bodies after death. He's an expert in taphonomy, decomposition, and other post-mortem outcomes like mummification, for example. In April 2021, Paul's defense attorney, Robert Sanger, contacted Dr. Carter to review evidence and photos collected by investigators from under Ruben's deck in March and April of 2021. Side note, I have to vent a little. I gotta let off a little pressure. First of all, I can't stand the dueling expert witness scenario. I've seen it time and time again. Why even have the expert witnesses? You know, one says one thing, the other says the other. How can you depend on the expertise? Really, the jurors decide who to believe? And secondly, this guy looks pretty slick to me and pretty well dressed, and all these little nuances register with the jury, some even subconsciously, in my opinion. It's just human nature. Sanger asked if Dr. Carter had requested or seen any of the soil samples personally. He answered, he did request but was never given access. Sanger went on and on about the soil staining. Dr. David said it appeared most likely to be naturally occurring discoloration found in sandy soil. Sanger asked Dr. Carter if he saw evidence of a body ever been buried there. The answer was he saw no evidence in the photos. Sanger asked what typically happens when body decomposes and how much fluid is released. Dr. Carter told jurors that what occurs after death can be hard to talk about. It's messy and leaves artifacts like bones, hair, or teeth, which all take a long time to break down. He added clothing and other non-biological items remain as well. Sanger asks, if a body is removed, would you still expect to see evidence of microbial activity in the soil? Carter answers, yes, but there is a short lifetime to that, before the environment will go back to how it was before. I don't think anybody knows exactly how long that would take. Sanger says, I think you're being very cautious with your answers, as you should be as a scientist. Prevail, objection, no question pending. Counsel is testifying. Sanger sighs. Sanger asks about archaeologist Cindy Arrington, suggesting that a semi-permeable wrapping could account for the lack of human remains left behind. And then Sanger asks, did you see any evidence of that? Carter says, I didn't see any evidence. Then Sanger asks, I'm asking you to imagine some kind of a tarp, as Cindy Arrington stated. Pavarel, objection, no question pending, misstates the testimony. Sanger says, that's what she said. Judge O'Keefe asks for a sidebar. Poor judge. Sanger, so, as far as you know, there's no evidence of a tarp in this case. Carter answers, correct. Singer, have you ever in your 20 years seen bodies buried in tarps? Carter, not that I recall. Singer, would you expect there to be microbes migrating with the fluids? Carter, you'd have to study what the effect of the tarp would be on those fluids. Judge O'Keefe asks for a sidebar to discuss jury questions. Question, if a body was wrapped in some type of material, would it lessen the smell of decomposition? Carter, that's a good question. Yes, you would expect that any time you would enclose something. It would decrease the odor. Singer asks, well, if the body was leaking fluids into the soil, some odor would be present, right? Carter, I would think so, unless the environment was cold enough to knock down the smell. Jury question. Would a body wrapped in some material decompose the same way? Answer, that's a tricky question. Yes, it would decompose differently. If you wrap a body in something, soil microbes wouldn't be able to get to the body the same way. And another jury question, does the body release gas pressure that could push decomposition fluids out of the body and into the soil? Answer, excellent question, whoever asked that. Absolutely. He praises, I feel like he praises the jurors like he's a teacher, which, makes sense because he is a professor. So it's almost like a teacher-student relationship, kind of trippy. Okay, moving on here. Putrefaction releases gas and makes a body start to bloat. That can force fluids out of natural orifices or man-made orifices, like stab wounds. It's sometimes referred to as purge fluids, but I prefer to refer to it more generally as decomposition fluids. Jury question. Jeez. Do you know at what level under the soil odor stops being detectable above the surface? Carter answers, excellent question. I don't know the answer to that. Oh, good. I was mentioning earlier I've been missing these jury questions. They're all over this witness today with the questions. I love it. So, here we go. Another jury question. Is the soil staining you saw in the pictures consistent with staining you've seen in other burial sites? Answer, not with anything I've seen firsthand. Another jury question. Would microbes destroy DNA within blood cells? Answer, short answer, yes. Singer asked another jury question. If there was blood that survived the microbes, should you expect to find DNA? Well, let's put this another way. Let's see. Singer rewords the question a number of times. Then he says, does that make sense? And Carter says, no. And everybody laughs. Finally, Singer is part of something that makes everybody laugh. He's been trying for a while. Singer asks, so from a expert forensic standpoint, as a scientist, it would matter to your opinion whether a body was buried 5 years, 10 years, or 25 years ago, right? Answer, yes. Singer asks, are you familiar with the length of time the HemDirect is able to detect blood? Prevail, objection, no foundation, sustained. With that ruling, I have no more questions at this time.
Collected by investigators from under Rubin's deck in March and April of 2021. Sanger asked if he saw any evidence that a body had ever been buried there. Carter said he saw no evidence in the photographs. Sanger also asked him what typically happens when a body decomposes and how much fluid would be released. During questioning, a lot was made of the staining that sheriff's investigators say was found in the soil under Rubin's deck. When questioned by Sanger, Carter said it appeared most likely to be naturally occurring discoloration found in sandy soil called lamellae. But when pressed by Prevail, he said bodies do typically leave darker stains in the soil.
Now it's time for Prevail to ask the questions, and it's weird having them be the cross examination attorney now. It's just different. Got to arrange my brain for that. So basically, he asks, how long has Dr. Carter been in California? And he says he arrived Monday. And then he asks, have you been to the Arroyo Grande home in person? The answer was no, he hadn't. Next question. If a body was dug up and removed, would you expect to see those type of artifacts? Answer. He admitted the artifacts could have been dug up with the body and removed as well. Then the prosecution pressed Dr. David about the darker stains. Dr. David said bodies do typically leave darker stains in an egg or oval shape, sometimes even creating an outline of the body. Remember the chilling testimony about the staining in the hole shaped like a hand and an arm? That statement was an objection, so it cannot be considered by the jury. We also heard prior testimony that Kristin was most likely wrapped in a semi-permeable material such as a tarp. Just saying. Testimony revealed that Dr. Carter mostly does research on non-human decomp, like sheep and rats and pigs. More recently, he has been doing research with a new program where human bodies are donated to study human decomposition. Dr. Carter said he was not being paid to testify. And I'm not sure about the other prosecution witnesses that we heard from, but I know Haynes, for example, and Arrington, the GPR and the archaeological analyst, they testified that they did not get paid for court. I'm sure some were paid, but the detectives and deputies, etc., do they get extra pay, or is it just like on-duty pay? I have no idea. Someone with knowledge on that, let me know. I'd be really interested to know the answer to that. So the defense team offered to pay him, but he declined, but they did pay for travel and hotel expenses. The prosecution asked more questions about the research that Carter was involved in, and if they involved animals and what kind, and humans or not. And he basically said he mostly did studies with rats in the beginning. I don't know about you guys, but I just got a wee bit less impressed, personally. I gotta imagine that possibly the juries too, but I don't know. Pavel asks, what type of remains did you move on to after the rat studies? Answer, mostly pig carcasses. Next question, how many human burial sites have you personally excavated? And Carter's counting and says, maybe 10? Pavel asks, is it fair to say that the deeper you bury a body, the slower the decomposition? Answer, that's the generally accepted thinking, yes. Next question by the prosecution, what is the longest in terms of decomposition, the longest study you've done? Answer, 3 years post-mortem. Question, were those humans or animals? Answer, those were pigs. Next question, how about the longest study with regard to human decomposition? He answers, a year or two, but I was not there for the study itself, just the data. Next thing he asks is, you wrote a report in this case, and one of your findings was the soil characteristics do not confirm human decomposition. Answer, correct. Then Pavel says, because you saw no body parts, no clothing, no accessories, no insects. Answer, correct. Then Pavel pushes further and says, would you agree that a hole 6 feet by 4 feet would be consistent with the grave site? Answer, it could be. Next question, decomposition fluid would darken the soil, correct? Answer, yes. Then he asked, and it tends to form an oval or egg-shaped stain in the soil around the body. Yes, I call it an island. Next question, would digging in the area with a shovel disturb the shape? Answer, I would think so, yes. Then Pavel asked, what materials were you provided with by the defense? Answer, photographs, reports of blood testing and DNA testing done on the soils, and some transcripts of previous hearings. Pavel, you've been in California for 2 days. Have you asked to see those soil samples in person? Sanger, objection! I have a motion. Mr. Pavel knows about that. Judge O'Keefe asked to speak to the attorneys in the hallway. They come back, and Pavel asks, you would expect to find a certain amount of fluid in a burial site. Answer, yes. Question, and that's unless the fluid has been dug out and removed. Carter, that's one possibility. Next question, you said you would expect to see clothing in a burial site, but if that had been dug out, you wouldn't see that, right? Answer, correct. And you said burials don't usually have insect activity at 2 to 4 feet. Answer, that's correct. Next question, fluid being released by a body would include blood, right? Carter answers, all of the fluids are kind of mixed together. You've never seen the Hem Direct test, correct? Answer, that's correct. Apparently, the jurors are warming up to Dr. Carter and laughing to his jokes, and he's being received well from descriptions. Next question. You've never personally seen a buried body that's been wrapped or concealed? Answer, no. Then he says, Your Honor, no further questions at this time. Defense Attorney Harold Misick says, I will defer to Mr. Sanger. At this time, several jurors submit more questions, and Dr. Carter explains how the soil tested positive for human blood, but Judge O'Keefe sustains objections that the questions are outside the scope of the witness's expertise. I did like the point that the prosecution was making about they didn't get the soil samples and acting like they were so out of reach, but nobody bothered, sounds like, to even ask or go to the site or anything else. Sanger comes back for more questions and asks Carter that they had offered to hire them, correct? And Carter says yes, and he asks him why he declined, and Prevel objects on relevance, which was sustained. A juror submits the same question Sanger just asked Dr. Carter, so Judge O'Keefe allowed him to answer, and the question specifically said, why did you insist on not being paid in this case? And he says, I suppose it's just a philosophy thing. A professor is supposed to be a resource to their community. Well, that was nice. Sanger, if we offered you payment, you would decline it? Answer, I think I'd have to now that I've just testified to it. And everybody laughs. Like I said, they're really digging this guy, it sounds like. After lunch break, Sanger publishes a photo of the soil staining, and he says, does this appear to be an example of lamellay? Objection, no foundation, sustained. Sanger, well, you found descriptions in the literature on lamellay. Yes. Sanger, and so, looking at this, is that similar to the lamellay you saw in the literature? Objection, lack of foundation, sustained. Goodness gracious, the dreaded lamellay. Sanger, well, do they appear to be consistent? Carter, to me they do. Prevel on cross-examination, so he's coming back again. You've never seen lamellay in real life, have you? Not that I'm aware of, was the answer. And then the prosecution asks him, did he write anywhere in the report that the stains appeared to be lamellay? And Sanger says, I'm going to object. That's unfair. He's misstating the report. And Prevel says, I'm reading it verbatim. Prevel and Sanger debate the phrasing of Dr. Carter's report, but are unable to come to an agreement. Defense attorney Harold Misick comes to ask questions, and he says, if a body's buried for 25 years, would you expect to see worms? Answer, I don't know. Misick, fair enough. No more questions. Oh, good old Harold. He never ceases to amaze me. He trips me out. I don't know where he was going to go with that worm question. So now Robert Sanger comes back and says, so at the end of the day, do any of these questions change your opinion that this area does not appear to have any indications of a burial site? He answers no. And then the prosecution says, your testimony is just that a presence of human remains is not confirmed. Answer, that's correct. And Dr. Carter was excused at 2:05 p.m. Judge O'Keefe asked the jurors to take a 20-minute recess. All right, a day doesn't go by when we don't have some excitement. Are you ready for this? We're having more jury drama. So this is what happens after break. The judge says, during the lunch break, someone reported that one of Paul Flores' jurors was engaged in a friendly conversation with the witness, Dr. Carter. They were admonished daily to not speak to any party or any witness in the case. So a bailiff brings the juror in question back in the courtroom. I bet they had their tail between their legs. They're blowing it again. So anyway, here's what happens. Judge O'Keefe then says, the court has received some information that you may have had a conversation with the witness who was just on the stand. Dr. Carter? The juror says, yes. Judge O'Keefe says, can you tell us what was said? And the juror says, well, I asked him, you came from Hawaii? I was expecting a suntan. And Judge O'Keefe said, did he respond to you? And the juror says, he said he spends his time inside buildings. Judge O'Keefe says, was there any other conversation? Juror says, I asked him how he's enjoying the Central Coast, and he said he missed his wife and cat back at home. I told him I hope he enjoys his stay. Judge O'Keefe asked, was there anything about your conversation with Dr. Carter that could cause you to be impartial in this case? Juror answers, no, ma'am. Judge O'Keefe asked the juror to return to the hallway. And then the prosecution, once the juror's out of the room, says, Your Honor, I'd asked to confirm this with Dr. Carter. So Misek says, it's just exchanging pleasantries. No harm, no foul. Oh, doesn't that sound like something he would say, guys? Judge O'Keefe says, okay, I disagree. They're not supposed to have conversations with anyone involved, even if it seems to be a harmless exchange. So Dr. Carter is brought back into the courtroom, and Judge O'Keefe says, Dr. Carter, we received info that you had a conversation with one of the jurors during the lunch break. Who initiated that conversation? Answer, it was not me. I was sitting outside fixing my socks, and this person started talking to me. Basically something like, it's nice to hear you're from Hawaii. I'm from Guam. I would expect you to be more tan. And Prevel says, how did this conversation end? And Carter says, basically with me saying, thank you, take care. Dr. Carter is excused and apologizes to the judge. Then Prevel now says to the judge, I'm very concerned. The jurors sought out the defense witness for a personal interaction, ignoring multiple daily admonishments from the court. The judge says, here's a suggestion. We can revisit the issue at the end of the day. We'll plan on breaking at 4:15 p.m. Singer says, I'll reserve my thoughts until then. The rest of the jurors now come back to the courtroom. Judge O'Keefe says, ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, throughout this trial, I have given you numerous instructions, one being that you are not to speak to any party, to any witnesses in the case. You simply can't do that. Please be mindful. And now defense attorney calls Elizabeth Johnson to the stand. Dr. Johnson works as a forensic DNA consultant for the public defenders and defense attorneys who do not have access to a forensic lab. Singer asks, are you familiar with Mrs. Butler, whose name just escaped me? Johnson answers, Angela, yes. Robert Sanger asks several questions about the validity of testing for blood in the soil under Rubin's deck. And she answered, the test is not designated to detect blood in soil. The court day ended with Dr. Johnson still on the stand, so we will hear the rest of what she has to say tomorrow. The jurors were excused at 4:17 p.m., but two of them were asked to stay behind. A female juror sent a note to the judge expressing her concerns about the conduct of a male juror. Both of them are on Paul's jury. Okay, so we're going to have double jury drama today, it sounds like. Geez. Judge O'Keefe, what is the nature of your concern? And the female juror says, just the lack of professionalism, the laughter. Judge O'Keefe says, you're referencing juror number, and that it's redacted. And the female juror says, yes. And the judge says, can you be more specific about when you heard him laughing? And she says, just laughing at the testimony or the questions the attorneys are asking. Then the judge says, you also indicated there were comments being made. What was the nature of the comments? And she says, maybe just about the attorneys and how he felt they were being unprofessional. That was what was occurring was also unprofessional. The judge then asks her, how long has this been occurring? And the juror answers, the snickering or quiet laughing for about a month now. The commentary just started today, I think. The judge asks the female juror to return to the hallway. A bailiff brings in the male juror. So we're 10 weeks in, and according to her, he's been doing this for a month. Just interesting. Okay. Now the judge says to the male juror, I've received some information that during testimony you may have been laughing at certain points and making comments. If you could refrain from doing that, it would be greatly appreciated. He says, okay, sure. Judge O'Keefe says, I need to ask if you feel that you've already formed an opinion in the case. And the male juror says, no, ma'am. There's so much information to take in. I don't even know what I'm thinking right now. I'm sorry, I like how he says it, the like. Judge O'Keefe asked the male juror to step out. And now Sanger chimes in. I think that this juror has gone over the edge. He was admonished previously about various things, but the female juror also concerns me now, in that she's come and reported things like this on several occasions. I wonder about the truth of her observations. That's weird. Singer says he wants to exclude the male juror at this point, and Prevel says, I'll ask the court to deny this juror was previously admonished in regards to staying awake, and he has. This is a different issue. Oh gosh, this was the one that was falling asleep. This is a different issue, and I think the court appropriately admonished him. And the judge says... Judge O'Keefe turns to Mr. Misick and says, Mr. Misick? And he answers, not my jury, Your Honor. Submitted. So Judge O'Keefe says, okay, I'm going to respectfully deny the motion. This is a different issue, and he seemed to take the admonishment very seriously. The hearing ended at 4:38 p.m. The earlier issue with the juror who had a conversation with Dr. Carter has not been revisited yet. See, I told you they were warming up to Dr. Carter to the point of going against jury instructions even just to say hi and have a little chit-chat with him. I'm going to have a little bit of venting time here. I'm sorry, twice in one episode. I just can't help it. Why didn't they finish addressing that? There's been so many admonishments. I feel like it's the same jurors just repeatedly being problematic, and it's not cool. You know what I mean? This whole thing should be taken a lot more seriously. Not only are we relying on the hope for justice for Kristin, but also because Paul has a right to a fair trial. As much as I don't like the man, he is entitled to a jury that can at least stay awake and doesn't laugh out loud, making a rape and murder a joke. And even hearing other women who were raped. I mean, how can you laugh at this? It's disgusting. Sorry, I'm really going there today. These jokers need to get it together, in my opinion. You know, there's a lot at stake here. And I hope that these two jurors that are acting like toddlers, in my opinion, you know, they seem like they need an awful lot of attention. They just, please, jurors, get it together. You're in the home stretch here. I know it's been rough on you. I know you can't hear this right now because you're busy doing your duty. But if you ever do hear this, please, there's too much at stake here. You can do it. I have faith in you. I know you've all been through a lot, but what you're doing is so very important. I know that you can complete the duty that you committed to. You're so close, guys. Hang in there. If for some reason this is too much for them, or if they feel like they can no longer be impartial, then we can accept that too. That's okay. You know you did your best. Don't forget, guys, we do have alternates for a reason. There's all different reasons, so these alternates have been sitting here the whole time as well, and if need be, they can step right on in. That might be a better idea, all things considered, but I'm still going to keep the faith on this. It's not too often that I actually agree with Sanger, but to be honest, I agree with what he's saying about these jurors. They're a pain in the butt. You know, we talk about wasting court's time. The nonsense with some of these jurors is ridiculous. And I could be wrong, and maybe I'm crossing the line saying this, but these two right here seem very immature. Sorry, just my opinion. Since I'm having to do this a little differently and not do it as a full script, here's some things I wanted to add. First of all, lo and behold, Dr. Elizabeth Johnson is called to the stand. And remember, we did the mini rabbit hole in the previous episode on Dr. Johnson, and she's known for calling out forensic labs for all the mistakes and sloppiness and the 68 prison terms that were linked to sloppy work in the labs that she revealed. You can see more details in that episode if you haven't seen it. So it should be really interesting to hear her full testimony, which more of it will basically happen tomorrow. I have a late addition. Chris added this Thursday morning for the testimony on Wednesday. Sanger asked if hemoglobin would be there after years of exposure. Objection. Improper hypothetical. Sustained. Then Sanger, seemingly frustrated, says, quote, well, let's just let it go. We'll have to come back tomorrow morning, end quote. And that was the end of her testimony until Thursday. In closing, one report says court resumes at 10:30, and then I see Chris Lambert says 8:30. If I was a betting woman, which I am not, I would guess 8:30, but either way, court will resume Thursday morning. I can't believe this circus related to these jurors, my goodness. And to be honest, I don't know about you guys, but when I first heard the note being sent saying that it was about conduct and it was a female juror complaining about a male juror, it scared me. For a second, I've been immersed in Paul's depravity for so long that I just thought it was inappropriate, like sexually related behavior. But it actually was just because he was being really unprofessional. So that was actually a relief. Not sure about you guys, but I'm not feeling good about all this jury crap. I put myself in their shoes, and I wouldn't want these people on my jury. Some of this is a joke, and I hate the repercussions that could come from this. Damn it. Man, this case has been a wild ride, and today in particular, I'm glad I put my seatbelt on in preparation for all this craziness. Well, we made it through another day, and we're getting closer to the end of this trial and hopefully justice for Kristin. Let us not forget who this is all about. I'll say it again. As always, justice for Kristin.
If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come.
Thanks for watching.
Bring my spirits up.
Don't forget to stop and smell the flowers.
There's some shit I like to fix, but I still know that I'm blessed.